Well, let's head to Birmingham now and speak to Head of DOGE at Reform UK, Zia Yusuf. Good to see you this morning, Mr. Yusuf.
Good morning.
Morning. Can I start by asking about the big news in Birmingham? I'm sure Nadine Dorries quitting the Tories after 30 years to join Reform UK. I'm just wondering, would you see her as a gain to your party for Reform? What's she going to bring to the party? Because our viewers aren't so sure. Robert's been in touch saying, who cares about Nadine Dorries? She's not an MP, she's not a minister, she's not even a shadow minister. At 68, she doesn't have much future in politics. Another one saying it's not a good move for Reform, in my opinion. Ex-Conservative, stale and boring. I wanted a fresh, clean, new party. What do you say to that?
Look, what I say is if people have that view, go and listen to what Nadine has said since it was announced that she was joining Reform. She said the Tory party is dead. The Tory party is dead and they need to wake up. People who are still potentially minded to vote Tory, there aren't many of those left, but there are some, need to, and I quote, wake up and smell the coffee. So look, we're glad to welcome Nadine. And look, we've also gathered lots of support from people who didn't even vote in the last general election. We've gathered a lot of support, of course, from Labour. Remember that seat in Runcorn and Helsby was one of Labour's safest seats. That wasn't a Tory stronghold, it was a Labour stronghold that Sarah Pochin brilliantly broke through and won that seat. So Reform is attracting people from across the political spectrum who frankly feel disillusioned about the state of the country, and we offer something totally new, and there is nowhere manifesting that more than here in Birmingham, with thousands and thousands of patriots from across the country coming to join us. We couldn't be more excited.
Yeah, but what you are doing is offering people what they want to hear. And you can see how that appeals to people, absolutely. The problem you've got, and which still hasn't been outlined, is how you deliver on all of these promises that you're making.
But what we're doing is actually listening to voters. And I know that's quite a shocking thing for a political leader to do, but that's what Nigel has done for decades. It's why he's built a career. People know what he stands for and why the bookmakers now have him to be the next Prime Minister. And he's the highest favourability ratings of any political leader in the country. So yes, we do listen to voters. In terms of plans, look, we put out a plan for how we would deport illegal migrants in this country, Operation Restoring Justice. We announced it a short while ago, and that level of detail years before a general election, I think is pretty extraordinary and pretty unprecedented. And you're going to get a lot more of that from us in the coming months and years.
Yeah, absolutely. But the problem with that is, and it's what a lot of commentators are saying, is right, that's a specific policy, and some people challenge what you put out anyway. But it's how that then ties in with, you know, the impact on the budget, what it would cost, what it would do to everything else, how it ties in with education, how it ties in with the NHS. How it ties in with everything else that we need to run in this country. And it's the bigger... We've got pieces of the jigsaw that you're giving us, but we're not seeing the whole picture.
Hello, I'm Bev Turner. Now, it can feel like the money in our bank accounts at the moment does not keep up with the cost of living. And maybe there's a solution. I'm here today with the CEO of TallyMoney, Cameron Parry. Cameron, what is TallyMoney?
Well, Bev, with TallyMoney, you get a current account and a debit card, but instead of pounds, you use milligrams of gold as your everyday money.
So why gold?
Gold traditionally is a great store of value. It has, on average, gone up at over 11% per annum for the last 25 years against the pound. It's tripled in value in the last decade. And in the last 2 years alone, it's increased by 50% against the pound. Banks' savings products just can't compete with that level of growth.
But this isn't just about gold. This is about a currency that you guys have created at TallyMoney. Explain it to me as though I'm an idiot.
So, look, people need to be able to hold their earnings and build their savings in a money that retains its value and remains in their legal control and remains theirs to access, away from government control.
Great. You had me at not exposed to government control.
You should feel safe and happy with your money. You should have peace of mind the more money you see in your bank balance, and that's the type of thing we're trying to deliver and give people choice in the type of money they get to use every day.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Cameron. Thank you.
Yeah, look, so the effect our deportation plan will have on the NHS was make it easier for people to get GP appointments and seen at A&E. But look, I take your point, of course. You know, we are years ahead, sadly, of a general election. There's a chance that we will get an early election than we might otherwise have had if bond markets continue to move in the way that they have because of this awful Labour Chancellor. But I will say this, you will see more and more of our plans in the coming months and years. You'll see more outstanding talent coming to the fore that Nigel will present to the British people and say that, you know, we've already said, for example, one of the big things that we'll do differently to the political establishment who have ruined this country over decades is at least half probably of Nigel's cabinet, his first cabinet, will not be MPs. They will be people who have achieved great things in the real world and will be appointed into the Lords and then will serve in that cabinet for the full term. So you wouldn't be a health secretary for 3 minutes and then a defence minister 5 minutes later. And by the way, the reason why this is important is because the British public have had enough of the likes of Rachel Reeves as Chancellor, the likes of Matt Hancock as the health secretary during the greatest health emergency since World War II. That's just one of many new ideas that Reform is bringing to the table that will make Nigel the most transformative Prime Minister in our lifetimes.
But that idea will also alarm a lot of people in terms of unelected officials being in charge of departments. How does that work in our political system, in our democracy, and also in terms of holding power to account?
Yeah, so there's precedent for that. I mean, not the best precedent, because we're talking about David Cameron, for example, was brought in to be the Foreign Secretary under Rishi Sunak. He was put into the Lords. So let me be clear about a couple of things. Of course, it will be MPs. It will be MPs in the House of Commons that pass legislation. That is number one. That is obviously not going to change. Number two, Nigel will put the names. Not only is he laying out this idea, but he's also going to lay out the names of the people who will sit in that cabinet office around him if the British people choose to elect us. And that will be in front of the British people ahead of the next general election. And actually, that's much more democratic than going in with one cabinet and then reshuffling every 15 minutes with a bunch, frankly, of clueless career politicians. I keep saying this. How has it worked out having clueless? Are you happy with Ed Miliband as Chancellor? Are you happy with as Energy Secretary? Were you happy with Matt Hancock as Health Secretary? Are you happy with Rachel Reeves as Chancellor? We've got to bring the brightest and the best in the country into these roles, and many of them don't want to be MPs. I want to say this too. How does it make sense that, for example, our the Minister of Defence is also doing constituency surgeries about the chlorine levels in the local swimming pool? That is an important local issue, but surely we can do better than ask the same person to do both of those things. It's one reason why ministers these days are not on top of their briefs, and they completely abdicate the responsibility for running their departments to these civil servants who have been captured, unfortunately, in this Blairite era. If we want to change the way this country is run, we have to have fresh ideas. That's what Reform offers.
Yeah, but the problem is, I mean, one of the big things on the Brexit campaign, to take us back to the dreaded B word, we don't want to start all that row again, but it was about accountability, wasn't it? It was all about accountability. We have no accountability of those people running things in Brussels for what's happening in the UK. Well, if in effect a huge proportion of the cabinet is actually just pushed into the House of Lords, there is no accountability. We can't vote them out. They can't answer to the House of Commons, as Secretaries of State and Ministers are meant to do at the moment. So aren't you replacing one unaccountable group of politicians in Europe with another group of unaccountable politicians in the House of Lords?
No, it actually creates more accountability. It creates more accountability because, number one, again, the House of Commons, it is MPs who will pass legislation. Cabinet ministers cannot pass legislation. That's the first point. Number two, but the British public cannot just simply choose to vote out MPs currently, sadly, otherwise they already would. If British people could initiate a general election tomorrow, my lord, they absolutely would, based on current polling. So there will absolutely be accountability, and it'll be up to the British people to assess the quality of the people Nigel is putting in front of them, which he will for his shadow cabinet ahead of the next general election, and for them to assess the work that they do. But the idea that someone who's achieved greatness in the real world in that particular domain, given a full 5-year term to run that department properly, bring in their own people and work on behalf, unapologetically and relentlessly on behalf of the British people, is not going to do a better job than, frankly, a witless, gutless career politician who knows absolutely nothing about the subject, I think is for the birds.
OK, Zia Yusuf, we're out of time with you, but thank you very much for joining us on Breakfast.